In 1996, the hundreds of people that pass through downtown Danbury each day on their way to work, school, or shopping are oblivious to the presence of the Still River. Few realize as they travel North Main Street, White Street, Patriot Drive, and numerous other city roads that they are crossing and recrossing a river that has been the community's defining geographic feature for over 300 years. 40 years ago, Danbury was very much aware of the Still River. Swollen by torrential rains, the normally placid stream surged over its banks in August and October of 1955, causing loss of life and massive property damage. Some Danburyans documented the disastrous floods in photographs and home movies. Many more still remember those dramatic days vividly. The video you are about to see combines the photographic record with tape reminiscences to form a portrait of the 1955 floods.
It was a dramatic disaster for anybody on the White Street area between Main Street and Maple Avenue. It was a disaster.
The level of water was unbelievable. A friend of mine owned a dry goods store on White Street, and I remember going to White Street where the water was coming out of the transom of the front door, which would probably be somewhere around 8 feet high, inside his store.
The water was rushing so fast outside between the buildings, I took a step out, and the water took me away.
Couldn't see anything outside except these sheets and sheets of water. It was terrible, the pounding of the water.
The next thing we knew, the whole building sort of rose right out. It lifted up like a boat and took us diagonally across the street onto the sidewalk. And we were still working in it, but the whole structure moved.
The mess was unbelievable. It's like someone took a giant egg beater and just whirled it around, and all the merchandise was strewn around, thrown over, topsy-turvy. Just terrible. The mud was horrendous, the depth of the mud.
The force of the water racing through the roads and buildings just created canyons where canyons never existed before.
Such a mess. Unbelievable. Mud, dirt, floating electric bulbs on the surface of the water, styrofoam cups, soggy corrugated cases, boxes that just collapsed.
The bales of fur, the hatter's fur, which were rabbit skins, they're huge bales. They weigh 500 pounds apiece. And they just went floating by like corks. You take cork in a little stream of water and see how it bobs around, just the way they were.
Left the car on Maple, and I proceeded to walk up East Franklin Street. And as I walked, I could see the water was getting higher and higher. First it was up to my knees, and then it was up to my hips. Well, I said, I'll try a little more. Maybe it won't go any higher. I got to the bridge on the East Franklin Street Bridge there, directly where the river flows under. And as I proceeded toward the middle of the bridge, the water was just about up to my chest, up to here. And I held on to the guard railing, and I could feel the pressure from the river pushing me against that railing. And all I can think of was that railing giving away, and I would be washed away in the torrent. So I had to rethink my strategy right there. And I turned around, went back towards Maple Avenue.
All of a sudden, it lifted up and started to bob, fast and furious. All of a sudden, the chicken coop and shed are floating down this river. Everything was absolutely gone. All we could see was the chicken coop bobbing up and down. You could hear the building creak, almost like you're in an earthquake.
The next thing I knew, I walked into the bathroom. There was water coming up from the floor. All I could think of was, if the water was coming in the bathroom, the whole cellar must be flooded. And if the whole cellar is flooded, it'll wash the house away.
The flood came right through our kitchen, right out through the living room, sent our furniture out through the glass windows.
It continued to rain and the wind was terrible. We were afraid to go to sleep.
The New York Fire Department arrived in Danbury when I was standing out in front of my dad's restaurant. And they came in with a convoy, I would say of about 35 trucks, pumpers, canteens, and they even had a tow truck with them. And the sirens were blaring as they were coming into town. Very emotional. In fact, I broke down. I was so involved there with regard to my feelings. It's unbelievable, and I imagine that it's not unusual for that to occur. It's one of the few times that I was so emotionally affected. A contractor by the name of John Kalinchak from Brookfield had given the city, free of charge, about 15 construction trucks, that is the real heavy trucks which they use for building roads and so forth. And of course they have high wheels and they're made for very heavy construction duty, and that fit in very nicely with the high level of water because the average car or truck would have been probably swept away. And just happened to look up and I heard this chopper come overhead. I heard that puttering of an engine, looked up and there was a helicopter. Sikorsky came up from Stratford. I saw one person who was dangling on a cord in midair. In the film, if you look closely at the film, you'll see this person in midair being cranked up into the helicopter off the rooftop. He's swinging back and forth.
And it was a mess. It was a mess. But the one I remember vividly is the Dodos, and they owned Ben's Workingman's store. I saw her the next day when the waters receded, and there were still puddles here and there. Some place it was still a foot high, the lower spots and whatnot. And I said, "How are you doing?" She and Ben had taken out all the dungarees and clothes and things that were soaked that they had stored in the cellar. And believe it or not, she was washing them in the gutter, getting the dirt out of them. Stacks and stacks of dungarees, rinsing them out and putting them aside, rinsing them up. And I said, "Do you think you're going to save any of them?" She says, "I don't know." She says, "We've lost an awful lot of stuff." She wasn't despondent over it. She sort of took it in good grace. She wasn't tearing up or crying or anything like that. This is just something that happened, and we'll make the best of it. And I think that's, what the people of Danbury did.
Tragedy has the ability to bind people together as no other event can do it. And everybody, the social and economic strata were stripped away, and everybody pitched in. Everybody was equal, and everybody had a shovel and a wheelbarrow and a willingness to help everyone out.
But speaking of help, what was so amazing is after the second flood, when the water was so bad, so devastating, I had a count, and I don't remember now, but it was somewhere over 50 local people, customers and friends, came down to us and offered all kinds of help in reorganizing and setting up. We had a huge, massive sale. And when I tried to give them something, either merchandise or money, absolutely nothing. They would not accept a single thing or a single penny for it. And every time I think about it, it brings a lump to my throat and a tear to my eye, thinking total strangers, no relatives, would come around and help like that.
The Still River will never harm Danbury again. After 1955, an angry community punished the river by imprisoning it in a deep concrete channel that guides its waters safely through the city. The floods of 1955 mark a major turning point in the relationship between the river and the people of Danbury.